Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. I'll never make it an opera. Welcome to another podcast, The Chris Voss Show. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and TuneIn. You can follow the podcast there. You can also see us on YouTube Live, where we're at right now at youtube.com/Chris Voss. And you can join our private Facebook groups at patreon.com/Chris Voss, where we give away a lot of the cool goodies that we review on the show. So we've got a really cool guest here to talk about some of the issues that we're seeing in today's news. Opioid crisis, of course, you see abound everywhere, and of course, mental health issues of people that sometimes aren't on their medication when they should be. And I'm welcomed today by the CEO of Emocha. It's an app that you can take and download. Sebastian Seiguer. Did I say that right, Sebastian?
You got it close, Chris. Seiguer.
Close. Seiguer.
Yeah,
sorry.
Very close.
Sorry. Right. With enough practice, I'll get it. Seiguer. So just like, never mind. I was thinking of the Full House person. So anyway, I think I'm off on that. So welcome to the show, Sebastian.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
On a fun Wednesday morning here. And you guys have built, over the last several years, you guys have been working on this project, the Emocha app, if you will. You can go to emocha.com, I believe, for this.
That's right. Yeah, normally you're going to be enrolled by a doctor or a nurse who's wants to make sure that you take your medication. So
what's the little concept behind you guys' app? I know it's about medication. I think in talking with the PR agent, you guys have some opioid epidemic sort of, or abuse sort of remedies or ways to use your guys' app to deal with that.
Yeah. So a bit of a history lesson real quick. People have been making sure that others take their medication for 60 years using a technique called directly observed therapy. That's when you watch somebody take every dose of their medication. And that's the standard of care in a few areas, but not in too many because it's really expensive, as you can imagine. So we started off in public health departments with tuberculosis. But now in the case of opioid addiction, medical term is opioid use disorder, it's really important that patients who get access to treatments for that they take these treatments on a daily basis. And that's where Emocha can help. So the app works as follows. The patient opens the app, enters any side effects they're experiencing, and video records themselves taking their medication. And on the other end, a provider is reviewing that. It's not live, it's asynchronous, so the provider can do that in their own time.
So this works really great. A long time ago, I think Forbes interviewed me. I was complaining about my rare and recent experience of having to work with local doctors over an infection I got from a burn and their failure to really do a good job, and the nightmare of waiting rooms and all this sort of good stuff. Sadly, at the time, I really should have looked more into building an app, and I thought of it for building an app that could what's the word I'm looking for? That could disrupt the waiting in line for 2 hours at a doctor's office and all that kind of crap, where you could actually get a doctor on your phone. And a lot of people have gone and done that now. There's a few different companies that are doing it. In fact, there's a psychology ad I see for a psychology app all the time on MSNBC. And I love these sort of apps because I imagine, some of these people may have to be taking this medication maybe by court order or probably for protection for the service providers, I suppose, to make sure that they have a legal coverage where they're like, well, we told him to take his medication. We have video of him taking his medication. So if he went off and shot up 5 people or something, it's not us. Or maybe we know why he didn't take his medication. And that's why we know he went off the farm.
Yeah, well, if you look at something like TB, it is the mandated standard of care to watch somebody take every dose because it's very contagious, right? And in that case, that patient experience of coming into the clinic every single day, that happens in every health department all over the country. Patients travel to their clinic, or the healthcare workers travel out to the patient. So in that case, we're saving tons of time and energy and money. In the case of opioid use disorder, it's a little different. It's there isn't always a mandate. Sometimes there is a mandate. Our theory is that if we can expand this into cases where it's not so dramatic, that people are just going to save a lot of money because they're going to get better faster, right? So they're not going to be hospitalized. And here's the biggest thing. Last year, actually 2015, the CDC reports that 33,000 people died of an overdose in the US. Wow. That's 100 a day. So on these medications, it's proven that overdose deaths are cut dramatically. So you can basically stop people dying by making sure that they, first of all, that they can access these remedies, but then that they take them properly.
Yeah,
and that's the perspective we're coming from.
I remember I was a big fan of, I still am, but I don't watch it every day, but I was a big fan of Howard Stern and Artie Lang. Big fan of Artie Lang. And I remember him on the show. I mean, he had problems with heroin addiction and I think pretty much everything. And if he wasn't on his Subutrain.
Yeah, Subutex, probably.
Yeah, I didn't even know what that was until he started taking it on the show. And you could actually hear when he was on it in his voice. But I remember when he would go off it, that's when bad stuff would happen to Artie. And I think eventually, I don't know if that's what prompted it, but I know he had that horrible, almost suicide that he did where he stabbed himself. And I imagine he was off his medication that whatever doctors had him on to keep him off of heroin and whatever else he was up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So these treatments, starting in, I think it was 2001, a medication came on the market that I've got a big echo, by the way.
Oh, do you?
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, the drug's name is buprenorphine, and combined with another drug called naloxone, it's a take-home remedy, which, if taken every day, patients don't have to come into a clinic or anything like that, and it's very effective. People can go to work, they can operate normally, and eventually they can beat their addiction as long as they take it. And what we're seeing now is that these drugs aren't getting to market because prescribers don't want to prescribe them. They don't know what the patient's doing with it. They don't know how they're doing. And so, yeah, I mean, it has a street value. It does.
Sure.
Because it removes the craving for opioids. So obviously very, very attractive for people who are addicted and can't get heroin at the time.
Well, I imagine, I know a lot of the opioid crisis stuff is happening in rural America, which is probably harder to get to a doctor or see a doctor on a regular basis. Imagine a lot of these people are struggling financially because of what they've been into for a while. And so this can probably give them a great way to, see a doctor, meet their obligations. And I suppose for caregivers, there's liability there. If a person doesn't take their medication, they could probably be sued for some sort of tragic event that they cause if they're not.
Yeah, they're less worried about getting sued and more, they just don't know if they can actually help this patient. So before they prescribe this, they're thinking, well, if they don't take it, they're just going to be back here in a few days asking perhaps for more, or they'll just disappear and they don't know what happened to them. And so I think that these prescribers, especially where, like you're saying, in these rural areas where there aren't too many, they just want to know that the patient's going to do okay and that there's a support system for them. These patients need a ton of support, a lot of support. So, and so I think that this is a huge problem, by the way. I mean, the scope of this problem, everybody is talking about it, so that's good, but the scope is unbelievable and doubles any other country, any other country's issues with these type of addictions. And it's going to be solved through primary care, through docs all over, not just in addiction counseling centers.
So you guys finding a lot of doctors that are taking your app and applying it to their practice?
We've just begun marketing the solution for opioid use disorder. Our first clinic launches in Tennessee next week, or actually the week after next.
Okay, so you guys are launching a clinic yourselves where you're going to have your own clinic?
Sorry. No, the first clinic that's using emocha for this is launching next week. And then actually the week after that in Seattle, Washington, the next.
Cool.
So right now we're limited to clinics that are seeing a value in keeping the patient in care. Half of these patients drop out after 8 weeks and are never heard from again. So, yeah, so for the moment, we're focused in on really top clinics, really docs with their hearts in the right place.
Does it ping? I mean, with that 8-week thing you say where people fall off and disappear, does it have like pings to it to bug people to make sure they check in, and then bug doctors to say, hey, this person has checked in for a while?
Yeah, so the patient's going to get a reminder whenever they're supposed to take their medication. If they're really good about it, we'll start to stop sending them. And if we know that the patient's having trouble, we're going to start sending them earlier, these reminders. The provider's going to get a summary report. They don't want to know, they've got so much on their plates. They can't handle, tons of notifications. But if somebody's really suffering, they've got, big side effects reports in, then they're going to get a notification.
I would imagine that it would also, with video, it would give an indication that the drugs might be being abused. Even if they can't see the patient always overtaking the medication, they could see maybe the effects of them in their facial features, maybe showing some sort of signs of relapse or something like that. I know opioid addiction, when I was in Utah, I think 2004, I had several friends that had heroin issues. And one of my friends, she was just a normal girl. Well, she was actually a sister of one of my friends, I should say. But she was just a normal person, everyday life. One day she gets in a horrific car accident, and she has to literally have one of those head cages to hold her head on and stuff. And she's bedridden for 6 months to a year or something. And just about killed her. And so they put her on that fake heroin. I forget what it's called. You can tell what I don't take. What was you know what I'm talking about, the fake heroin?
So there's several of them. There's several opioids that are prescribed for pain. Yeah,
it's basically prescription grade heroin when it comes down to it. Exactly. So they put her on it, and she became addicted. And one of the problems they were having very early on was her mom. She was living with her mom. Her mom was caring for her, and she would constantly be asking for the pills. And her mom would be overprescribing the pills to her. And I remember at one time I'd gone to a Thanksgiving dinner, and there was a huge argument that ensued about how the mom was giving the daughter way too much of the synthetic heroin pills, and it was going to cause problems for the daughter. I think if somebody could have taken video of the daughter, they would have seen that there was being an overprescription or over-application of the drug there, and probably a future problem with addiction. The gal later became so addicted to it that she ended up starting to work the streets just like you'd work for heroin, and she died of a heroin overdose in the end.
That's horrible.
So she went from just from having a car accident, prescribing, and I'm sure you've probably heard a million of those stories over time. Yeah. But it was very close to me, and where and then I've had other friends that have been addicted to heroin, and to hear them talk about it is like haunting, as to the fact that they can't get over it, and their bodies can't get over it. And I've had some people, they're just soulless in how hooked they are on the drug, and I imagine it's an incredible drug to get off. I mean, I had a hard time getting off fast food and Mountain Dew pop. I can't imagine what it's like getting off of heroin or smoking or something. I mean, I would say that your app's great for a lot of different features that way.
Yeah, right in the middle of doing all this. So we started in on this particular use case about 1.5 years ago, but in the spring, or actually, last February, my son broke his arm playing lacrosse, and he came home with a huge bottle of opioids. And it says on the label, take this, 2 times a day or as needed. And that's unbelievable, right? So I think that over the last, 15 years, there's been a big movement that patients shouldn't feel pain when they're recovering from surgery or anything like that. So doctors and prescribers have really been pushed to remove pain from the equation. But in terms of the opioid epidemic, you've picked on one big piece of it, which is overprescription, right? And I think there could be a use for emocha in that area. Less so for making people take it on time, because there you don't want them to take it. You just want to make sure you know when they did. We're more interested in this second bucket, which is people who have, or who now have an addiction. Now, what do they do? But yes, it's a multifaceted, complicated problem. And the big thing is that these are doctors, right, who are prescribing the problem, right? It's coming from the healthcare system. And I think the biggest and best thing that's happened over the last few months is that addiction is now it's seen as a health problem, right? Because this is coming from a lot of this is coming from our healthcare system. So this is a health problem that people have. It's a chemical dependency and a behavioral health issue.
Yeah, I've read about how I think it's in West Virginia or Tennessee or some of these states, Kentucky, where there's actually areas or pockets where the overprescription of these drugs, which are clearly what's happening, is and I guess from what I read, the doctors are overprescribing. The opioids are finding their way into the black market from there. I've seen a lot of, and I've had friends that have had drug problems where they're willing to even do stuff to themselves, like fall down a flight of stairs or mock some sort of injury or create almost an injury where they'll cut themselves to be able to go to the doctor and go, well, I have a cut. I need I need XYZ drug. And they get it, and they find doctors that will overprescribe to them. Sometimes this is probably great for if the DEA wants to enforce some of the rules. I know there's discussion now where the drug czar, I guess, is that was nominated by Donald Trump isn't going through with his thing, I guess, because they had some exposure of the prescription companies trying to keep the opioid abuse issue from being controlled or being regulated. So I know a lot of it's really in the forefront right now, and I think Donald Trump was supposed to announce an opioid abuse sort of crisis or some sort of way to try and manage it.
Right. Yeah. So I think he is about to declare a state of emergency, which, and you also brought up something else, which is that opioid use disorder, so addiction, has traditionally been kept in the criminal justice system, right? So it's been treated as a personal failure. But as in the example that you just gave me, this is a medical problem, right? So I think that on the one side, yes, the prescription of opioids needs to be, like, too many opioids are being prescribed. That's clear. On the other hand, people who have a problem, they need to be treated as you would treat a patient, because in a lot of cases it is, and in most cases it's not about a failing, it's about a chemical dependency. And fact of the matter is, any jurisdiction who solved this problem, and there are a couple examples, they have treated it as a medical problem, and you cannot take away this problem by locking people up, basically, and treating them as criminals, because their lives will spiral out of control, and we will just end up with more deaths, essentially.
More deaths, more unwanted incarcerations.
Right.
You look at other countries in the world, like Canada, that is providing needles as safe places for heroin users. The rampant use of thing of intravenous needles, Hep C, like you say, tuberculosis. Years ago, I owned a courier company, and we used to do a lot of blood draws and body fluid samples that we would have to pick up at the hospital and rush to the testing facilities, because usually that person was in the emergency room dying of something, and they needed to find out what was in their blood, what was in their urine or stool samples, to be able to determine if they could, what to do to save them. And so usually, we were on a rush call, we'd pick it up, take it to them. Sometimes we'd be going back and forth with different stuff. Sometimes we'd be taking blood units from blood clinics or blood places and taking them to individual hospitals because someone was on a table bleeding out. And so we saw a lot of those issues. But I'll never forget, when we'd be in the hospital, I think there are placards now in the hospital that basically say, because you're in the hospital, there are people here that have TB or something, and you're at risk for TB. And then I think a lot of medical professionals have to inoculate against TB, don't they? Because they work in a hospital.
Yeah, so you definitely have to get tested pretty regularly, and that is a big deal to track all those healthcare workers.
Yeah.
Luckily, TB in the United States, it's not eradicated. We're down to 10,000 cases,
Wow.
which is not a lot. But in I think it was 1960, it was like 80,000 cases, and that's how. And direct observation played a huge role in getting that number down, and that's 800% reduction. So that's huge. Imagine something like that for opioid use disorder, where right now there's 2.5 million people addicted to either heroin or opioids. Right.
Plus, that'd be really good to keep those guys with TB and maybe other issues out of the hospital.
You probably might.
When I'm going there for a hangnail.
But what we can say though is that by sharing needles, you can spread other diseases like HIV or hepatitis C. Hepatitis C, there's 2 million Americans with hepatitis C, and there are great cures now. There are amazing, 12-week regimens to cure Hep C. But Hep C kills more people in the U.S. than any other infectious disease.
Wow.
So, but anyway, it's both HIV, Hep C. There is an overlap here to the to injection drug use. So, all interrelated problems and all of serious public health consequence, right? And big issues that we do not want to have these in a developed industrial country. We want to have people be healthier and get better faster in general.
Well, it's amazing the vision of Steve Jobs that we can fix everything through an app.
Well, yeah, you kind of can. I mean, our app actually, what it does is it just takes the human observation and just scales it, right? Yeah. So it really is the fact that somebody on the other end sees it and reacts. So it has been proven when it's been studied that observation works, not just because what we had said when we were talking earlier, that people perform better in some cases, not all, when they're being observed. It's that there's a communication loop. So if I see you didn't take your medicine, I'll give you a call, and all of a sudden you, out in some rural area, completely isolated, you've got somebody who actually cares.
Yeah.
Who's giving you a call and who actually cares if you didn't take your medicine. And that's a big deal to a lot of people who are really isolated and struggling with whatever problem that they're facing. It's got to be really, really scary to have TB or to have Hep C, or these have got to be extremely distressing situations for people. So to get some human support on a near daily basis, it's a really big deal.
And I've known people, like I say, that if they don't take their lithium, or if they're schizophrenic and they go off their pills, there's a Dr. Jekyll and a Dr. Hyde that creates a very palpable danger to either a person they've attacked before, being usually I think I saw it in an ex-girlfriend sort of situation with domestic violence, where if a person went off their lithium, they would start stalking and start harassing whoever they were bothering. And I know with schizophrenics, if they go off their medication, things can go really weird. I'm reminded of the an Arizona congressman, when she was shot by that guy who went through, he was having an episode of that. Here in Las Vegas, we had another thing where a schizophrenic went off his medication and drove several years ago into a corner of Las Vegas people and killed a few people and injured some others. So I think, I've known people that they need to be on their medication, and when they're not, they become a danger to themselves and society. And then of course, like you say with accountability, about a year and a half ago or so, I took on trying to lose 100 pounds. I lost about 70 of it.
Wow.
And one of the ways I did it was I said, I'm going to post every day my weight, and I'm going to talk about what I eat every day. And I'm going to do it for accountability, so that I know that every day my whole public is going to see whether I lost weight or not tomorrow, and whether I stayed on my diet. And that really worked for me. I had some people that were like, that's, you shouldn't do that. You should just keep it private. And I'm like, you don't understand. My problem is if I keep it private, then I go eat bad foods. So that accountability of knowing that every day I was going to have to post my weight picture and even pictures of me losing weight to my audience on a daily basis, and the commitment that I'd made, that actually helped me stay on my diet. Because I would, I'd be wandering through my day and I'd be like, you should go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. And my brain would be like, well, tomorrow you have to show everybody in a picture.
Yeah. So you were aware, and other people's, observation of you was driving that. I mean, think about it this way. Maybe in the example you were telling me with with mental illness, how do we know whether somebody's taking their medicine right now?
Yeah.
For anything, we have no idea. And so a patient comes in like 6 months later to an appointment, or a year later, and they're asked, have you been taking your medication? And the answer is, yeah, most of the time. But we don't know how many, like how often. Was there a month where you didn't? So it's something we know nothing about. And in the situations like when you're in hospital, you will notice that the nurse is always going to watch you take any medication that gets delivered to you. There's a really good reason for that. Medication works only if you actually take it. So it's interesting that we know nothing about. We spend like $700 billion a year on medication.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's proven that it's about like 40% of it isn't taken, right? So we do not know what's happening with several billions of dollars of medication. It'd be great to know, and it'd be really helpful for patients who are supposed to take it to be taking it.
Yeah, I grew up with friends when I was a kid who was like, hey, go see what's in your mom's prescription cabinet that she hasn't used. And sometimes there'd be old medications sitting in there. And of course, he had one of those books and knew. So I imagine a lot of this over prescription drugs sometimes find their way into the black market, which probably causes even more problems, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in a lot of the cases of these drugs making it into the market, they're just a gateway for heroin, which is a lot cheaper. So a lot of these opioids that are prescription drugs are much more expensive than heroin. And when heroin gets too expensive, it gets also diluted, and other cheaper, more dangerous things get mixed in with it. So yeah, it's not a good trend at all.
Yeah, I've heard about some of the drugs that the guys use, like in Russia, that basically will kill you and eat you from the inside out. And it's kind of like the next step from above heroin.
But how did you do in the end with the weight loss experiment?
I lost 70 pounds.
Nice. Are you still posting that every day or not?
I'm posting every day my losses, my vegan diet. I pretty much went vegan, quit drinking pop, quit eating all the crap I was eating, and pretty much just went vegan. I mean, I'm not like a militant vegan. I don't really have a thing about going vegan other than just, hey, I lost weight. I quit, I eat more live foods. I don't eat dead foods. I'm not really a vegan per se, if you will. In fact, I had a roast beef sandwich this morning. But that over that time, that kind of helped me go through that process. But definitely being accountable. And I think the fact that I'm got stuck at 70 pounds is because I quit making myself accountable every day. But there were some issues that went into that we're still dealing with my dog's cancer, and Trump certainly didn't help me lose weight at all with the stress when he got elected. So there's been some changes from that, but certainly if I really wanted to lose weight again, I should go back to daily accountability.
Right. I like that analogy.
Yeah, it really helps. I mean, I'm a single person. I don't have anybody here except for the dogs to make me accountable. So it's really easy to cheat if I want to cheat on eating some bad foods or, getting some onion rings or something like that. It's easy to cheat if no one sees what you're eating and there's no accountability. But definitely you're on some better behavior if somebody's watching when it comes down to it, I found.
Yep. And the immediacy is also important, that it be every day. Because if it's a week, you could be like, well, you know what? I had a bad week. Fine. But every immediacy is really important too. Every single day, you develop a habit then.
And I imagine there are providers that get sued when some sort of horrific thing happens where, some psychotic goes off his meds and shoots up something. We all hear the stories of, well, he went off his Prozac and decided to go rampant crazy on the public. I imagine there's lawsuits that come out of that. This is one way to, have some sort of documentation of, well, he was taking his medication and maybe that did cause it or maybe that didn't, but issues liability, all that sort of good stuff. I can see that if I was a doctor, I'd like to have it because I like to know if you took your medication or not, or if it's been working.
I think doctors are they know that they shouldn't be prescribing somebody medication if they don't think they're taking it. I think that in these extreme cases, it's rare that the doctor could be held responsible in many cases unless they're clearly overprescribing. So, but there have been very recently there are pharmaceuticals being sued by states for accountability, for trying to find accountability for the current opioid epidemic. But yeah, it's really hard to find where who's responsible for all this and where do we use the criminal justice system? Where do we use lawsuits to make it all, better? Best thing is reduce opioid prescriptions in general, get people treatment, and for overdoses themselves, there are drugs to stop an overdose now too. So, but really, really bad situation we're in general.
Yeah, it's in these states. I can't remember if it was West Virginia. There's like a county in West Virginia that consumes like some outrageous percent of opioid prescription abuse, and I guess what's happening is the doctors are overprescribing it, and it's finding its way into the black market.
Right.
And it's kind of like, it's almost like a known what's the Spanish word? It's almost like a known drug cartel sort of thing that have this underground black market that they're working with these doctors on, and it's just crazy. And these people are living in these rural states that have no jobs, no work, and all they have is heroin or Oxycontin. That's what it is. Oxycontin.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get hooked on this stuff, and it's just awful.
Yeah, generally speaking, you are gonna see a lot of people who are very socially isolated, and that's not going to get any better when they got a problem like this.
Can drug courts use this? I've had friends that they're mandated by drug courts to take medications and things like that. I don't know if that falls into the scope of what you have with the app.
Yeah, we've chosen not to go that route, and mostly that's because we don't want to be seen as part of criminal justice, right? Mm-hmm. So we really just want patients to get treatment, and so we're seeing it as more of a supporting tool for for providers who want to support their patients, rather than a control mechanism coming from government, basically. Yeah. I'm not going to say we're anti-government at all, in that sense, but because we serve public health, but we really come at this from the public health and medical perspective, and we're seeing this as a disease that needs medical treatment and attention. We'd rather be working for doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers than for judges and law enforcement.
Well, certainly, if you can, work with doctors to keep them from getting to that point where they end up in the legal system, that can certainly help. Sure. And something does need to be done about the opioid prescription abuse crisis in this country. It's out of control.
One of the really interesting things is that now there are databases in nearly every state where prescribers can look up all prescriptions that a patient's received and who prescribed them. So there's a lot more transparency coming into play right now. So you can see those prescribers who are like clearly over prescribing. So there is some progress there.
Laura, I think I saw some. I had one friend. Well, I'm not sure that we're still friends anymore, but I know I had one friend who was hooked on. It wasn't an opioid. It might have been an opioid. I think it was Lortabs or something like that. They were hooked on one of those drugs that dentists will give you that works really well. And so yeah, it's crazy. And she was one of the people that will injure herself to be able to go in the doctor and be like, I was in her big thing is she was in a car accident like 20 years ago or something, and she's still in lots of pain all the time. And she's just an addict to it, really, and abusing the drug.
Yeah, there are the stories. I mean, we could go on. We went to we did a focus group at an opioid treatment center with about 10 people who were on methadone. Methadone is a drug that's given in person every single day, doses hand delivered to the patient at their facility. And anyway, at the start of these meetings, each person goes around and they tell their story, how they got there. And of course, it's like the saddest thing ever. The person leading that group said that she first started using heroin when she was 9 years old.
Jesus.
And you just think, wow, like what kind of chance did that person have? And it was through through a parent was providing this. And you just think, what kind of chance does a person like that have? And the great thing is she is still in a methadone treatment facility and has been for 10 years. And that's harsh as well, to have to do this every single day of your life, to show up at a opioid treatment center. But she's better than she was before, and she has goals that she set for herself to eventually get off of all types of treatment. But yeah, these people do not like their condition, and they want to improve themselves.
Yeah, and I know sometimes that can be bad, and when you're addicted to stuff. I certainly had that issue with food and pop, and when it came down to it.
Like if I haven't had probably about 3 cups of coffee by about 8 in the morning, I've got the intelligence of like a second grader, third grader, somewhere around there, and I can barely speak. It's terrible.
In fact, I really should have a coffee doctor who's like, "Are you drinking your coffee? I'm taking my medication, Mr. Starbucks." In fact, I think that's what my Starbucks app is doing, because that'll send me, "Hey, we've got a special on XYZ," and I'm like, "Damn you, Starbucks." So that might become their new app thing. Show us drinking your coffee every day. But no, I think this would be a great thing. When I was contacted by your guys' PR agency, I know this is a huge deal. I've had friends that have died from overdose and going off their medications. And it's a very sad thing to see with the opioid crisis and everything else, and prescription drugs being an issue, and knowing they're being abused, and especially some of the stuff that I read about the overprescription of opioids and OxyContin in some of the rural states like West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and stuff like that. It's just really crazy. In fact, I think a lot of the governors now are really worried about it. Wasn't Mike Pence's state in Indiana going through an opioid crisis? No, his was a heroin AIDS crisis, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2 years ago it was HIV, but now it is opioid. And actually, Indiana just released a lot of money to combat opioid addiction just in the last few days. So I think most states have. I think there's several $1 billion right now provided by the federal government or states. So there is a lot happening. A lot of it, luckily, is going to medication-assisted treatment, which is good because it actually works. So
we need to do more. We need to do more with mental health in this country to keep some of the atrocities from happening. We really need to work harder on that. And I can just think of a million places where people went off their meds and then injured people in the public. So that's why I drink my coffee every day, so that no one dies. If I drink my coffee every day, no one gets hurt. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Just keep the coffee going.
I'm afraid that I'll like smack right into a wall or just fall over. So I gotta keep it going.
Yeah, I was joking with somebody yesterday about how I wish I could have like one of those intravenous coffee IVs next to my bed, and then like it would kick in the coffee into my veins like half an hour before I wake up, so that I could, I just wake up caffeinated. But that's another drug, I guess. So there you have it. Well, it sounds like a great app. It's emocha.com. Sebastian, tell us where else we can find you on the interweb and all that good stuff.
Well, that's the best place. We're also at Emocha Health for Twitter.
Oh, okay. Emocha Health for Twitter.
At Emocha Health, yeah.
You can find you guys over there. So if you're a doctor, I suppose check into emocha.com, or I suppose if you're someone who has issues, suggest the app to your doctor and get them aware of it.
There you go. Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, accountability is important. I think we need to do more for mental health. We need to do more for people that are opioid. We got to quit throwing them in prisons and forgetting about them, which they never get fixed. They never deal with their issues. Right. And I think more and more countries like Canada and Bolivia and other countries have really shown that legalizing drugs, of course, takes away the black market. Nevada just did that with pot, and other states as well. And then and giving these people really tools to help them, as opposed to just throwing them away into prison where they're just going to have a higher recidivism rate. And we're going to probably spend far more imprisoning them than we would to fix their problems. And of course, we lose their contribution to society and life because we throw them away. So any way we can stop that, I think, is a really good thing.
Yeah, and while we're talking about how expensive drugs are, we can also do something to make sure that they're actually taken, right? Yeah. So doesn't really make sense to complain about how expensive something is when 30% of it's going to be chucked out anyway. So so we can get people better.
Yeah, plus if they're taking the medication, they're not reselling it on the black market, so that probably will help also too as well. So you don't have to worry about your 9-year-old getting heroin from their friend at school who got it out of their mom's, well, it wouldn't be heroin, it'd be Oxycontin, but their mom's medicine cabinet, which I know a lot of kids actually get into. And as you said, 50% of patients don't take their medication as prescribed. I've been guilty of that with like ear and nose infections from not taking my penicillin on time and it getting worse. So.
We don't know why. Well, we have some ideas, but people just aren't good about it, right? And it's across the board. It doesn't matter whether you're addicted to opioids or you get prescribed penicillin. People just don't tend to take it regularly. They need a little bit of help. So
well, thanks for coming by and spending some time with us, Sebastian. I really wanted to shine some light on this and talk about opioid addiction, and especially now with it being the news, hopefully there will be some sort of announcement by our government and some real steps to take and deal with the abuse, because it's out of hand. It was out of hand in 2004 when I saw the heroin use in Utah. It became so cheap to get heroin. I think my friends are buying it for like $10 or whatever. And I'm just like, that's cheaper than pot, I think. And it was scary because they were like, well, it's cheaper, so we take it. And you're like, you're just going to die faster. So,
right.
Anyway, thanks for coming by. Thanks to my audience for coming by the Chris Voss Show podcast today. Be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and now on TuneIn app. If you have the TuneIn app for music and all that good stuff, you can catch the podcast. Be sure to go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, patreon.com/Chris Voss, and be sure to subscribe to all the things we do across so that you can get all the updates for the new shows that we do almost daily now. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Sebastian and emocha.com for coming by the show. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.
Thank you.